Well, welcome everybody. Wow, another live stream. I couldn't believe when I got to Saturday morning and it was already the second Sunday of July. What happened to June? It just flew past. And I can tell you what I was doing in June. I was doing Port Dinorwic and I actually finished it. Now this is going to be confusing because it will be coming out on live streams for the rest of the year because I hadn't planned to finish it this early, but more on that in a minute. First of all, welcome to everybody in chat and who's listening. It's really, YouTube's flashing up. Now would be a good time to insert ads. okay, so they want me to not only talk to you, they want me to now start adding ads as well at the same time. YouTube, I love you, but not that much. Anyway, welcome to everybody in chat. Now I can see you again and the YouTube notification across it all's gone. Thank you to everybody who's here Sunday night. I don't know how hot and sticky it is by you. It's fairly hot here. I've got a Mickey Mouse watch and he says it's 26 degrees and sunny. And for some countries you'll just laugh because that's cold. But in this country with no air conditioning and stuffy houses, it's relatively hot. So I spent the day keeping out the sun and editing Port Dinorwic videos as well as other computer stuff. Let's say hello to everyone in chat first though. Right. So welcome to everybody. I've probably missed loads of people, but we've got John, we've got Simon, we've got Norm, we've got Digger and Timber. Norm, Digger and Timber are my moderators, so big thanks to them as ever. They'll no doubt be stopping some dodgy chat channels later. I'm sorry for those that want to watch them. So Average Joe, Port Dinorwic, Tom L, Mark Wilson, Andy T, John Crook, Stuart, Ken Small Engine Repair, Mr. Moe-It-All, well, it's a good name, and he loves my channel. Thank you ever so much. Mark Wilson, I wish life still ran at this pace. I think he's talking about the video that's at the beginning of the stream. It would be nice, wouldn't it, to be a little bit slower at time. Digger says, someone asked at the beginning, and I've already lost track of who it was, Stuart, was there an alternative to sculpt mold? And Digger's giving the answer. There is a similar product on Amazon. If you don't know what to do instead of sculpt mold, go check out Geek Gaming Scenics. He does a how to make your own using toilet roll and plaster, I believe. I just bought loads of it. My old stuff used to have loads of working time. It was really good. My new stuff sets up too quickly and I mix too much. It's fascinating how it changes over time. Right, so still more people joining. Brilliant. Hi, Stephen. So everyone asking, am I okay? I'm fine. If you haven't seen me on Instagram until this week, I have been doing Port Dinorwic. Again, more about that in a second. Jaw21, is it my headphones or is the left audio slightly lower? I don't know, I thought I did this on mono, but it could be stereo. It's all, whatever I do it on, it goes somewhere else, but the it could just be that I'm always pointing that way to look at the chat and I rarely get to look at the camera, so maybe just I'm never quite pointing at the mic straight, but I can't get the mic in front of me because it would block the screen. So where are we? 26 inside in North Wales too. Nice to know that. Andy T says, colour flashing a bit but sound very good. Is that the colour on the iPhone that changes? It's really annoying. I think there's too much light coming through the windows and if I move, it catches different light and does the auto white balance. So next time I'll see if I can change the auto white balance. I daren't touch it now, it'll probably stop the whole screen. But yeah, it could well just be I should have set a white balance on it earlier. Someone in America, James Avery, is 85 with a relative humidity of 90 in Maryland. I have no idea what that means. It may as well be Greek. Sorry, I can't convert. I know you divide by 5 times by 9 and add 32 or some variation of that, but I can never remember which way around. So, but welcome, James, anyway. Hi, Tamsin. Tamsin is also on Second Dynasty with me, so we've been watching Ben release his Kickstarter, and if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that's what I'm printing at the moment. Hi to Alan and Sherilyn in New Zealand. Oh, well, that's Alan. It's only 19 in Germany. Thorn, you are so lucky. It would be nicer to be 19 at this point. So James says 85 is 29 degrees C. Thank you, James, for translating. That is hot. It was about that yesterday, I think, and I was in London on Friday, and it seems hotter in London, probably because you're always trying to walk between train stations. So we've got a few more suggestions on Sculptamold. WWS is another UK supplier. It's 28 degrees in Connecticut, USA. It's always hotter in the US, but the one difference between the US and the UK, most people in the US have air conditioning. Nobody really has air conditioning in the UK. But I've rarely been to a house in the US that didn't have some kind. So, yeah, thanks, Keely. He says, Dwight, he says, I look good sideways. It's always the trouble. I'm trying to read over here. The camera's over here, and actually the screen for OBS is over here. So if I want to see what's actually projecting, I have to look this way. And oh, it is colour. I didn't do that before. I wonder what I can do about that. Hold on a sec. Let's try this light. It's because the colour balance is too different. No, that one. Let's see if that's better. The colour balance is too different between the two different sets of light that I've got. And this is blue, this is yellow, that's blue, that's whitish. And then the one in the window is white. And when I first did this, back when I started, there was no light outside. So there we go. I've now got lights in my eyes though. YouTube is stereo, depends on what you're setting on the mic is. I often set it to mono, but I thought it should be stereo if it's, anyway. So London is 28 degrees outside, 30 degrees inside the flat. I'm not surprised Tamsin, it's always warm inside. I actually put ventilation tiles in my loft last year to try and increase the sort of venting through. It has made a difference. It does make a difference. So loads more suggestions on Sculpt Mould for those people who are interested. But it's basically cellulose fibres if you can find them, mashed up paper, whatever that is, and then a bit of plaster. So we've got 29 degrees from Tim in the East Midlands, just down the road from me. It does feel pretty humid. And then morning from Brisbane, that's Monique. Monique, I'm sure you would think that 26 degrees is quite cool. I actually don't mind the heat, so I'm not that fussed. Good day, Sparky 107 107. Hi Tim. Tim's had an exciting day today. I haven't written an email back to you, I'm really sorry. But he's had footplate rides and he's been up in North Wales. So that's been fun. Tim says he stayed in places in Alaska that had no aircon. I bet they had heating. Yeah. Norm says there's more concrete in cities, the hotter. That's true. It's the greenhouse effect or the something like that. We did it at school. So the closet branch is here to see his digger's moderation skills from Jerry's place. Okay, welcome aboard. And James Avery says homes in the northern part of the US didn't get to air conditioning until the 2000s or so. Before that, it didn't really get above 26 degrees C. They're saying it's going to be hitting over 40 in the UK soon, and we may have to consider what we do about air conditioning. Because I have my loft open, it's got vent tiles. Even though the layout's not in there, I still leave it all open. I find my heat goes up. Last year, it was just sitting in the upstairs of my house. So it is a lot better this year. So I think everyone's in. If I haven't said hello to you, please don't get offended. It's just whizzing past really quickly at times. And McKenna Siding, I don't think I said hello to you, but it's interesting. He says he uses cellulose blown-in insulation. I looked for that online. I couldn't find it in the UK, so I'd be intrigued to know if you're in the UK, which I thought you were. But I suspect you're not, because it's not common here to find online. I know the reason I looked was Jason Schron used it in his homemade Sculpt Mould that he put on Instagram a while ago. So what have I been doing? Because, you know, this is all about Port Dinorwic, and that's what I've been doing. I can't mention which TV series, but a TV series is recording Port Dinorwic, and they've been out 3 times across June and July. They kept trying to bring it forward and I kept resisting. They originally said end of August. I said, yeah, I can finish it in that time. And then somehow it ended up as the 1st of July. So I had to get Port Dinorwic done in about 8 weeks. And I'd been piddling along fairly slowly at the beginning, doing the laser cut baseboards and not really rushing. And somewhere in this, I had to design all of the 3D buildings, which took forever and most nights and all days for a week and a half or something. I then had to print and paint them, which is what we're looking at this week, and weather them. I also had to I think I'd laid the track by. We've already had that, but by the time this change of timing came in, and then I had to do all the details. I hadn't even got a chip in my loco, so I had to get the locos working. One of them's still a bit dicky, but they're running. And it was all carefully scoped. I put loads and loads of project plans in. I resisted it coming any earlier and I got it all done. And then the day I was trying to run, I couldn't get the 009 stuff to run. It was too light. I needed to put some weight in it. And the 00 Loco has this awful growl. It's just awful. And I think it's gear noise. It's a Bachmann Ginty. It didn't have it till I weathered it and took it apart. So I thought maybe I didn't take it apart. So I put it back together. Cameraman due for final shots at 12, half 11. It's in pieces. Put it back together. And it doesn't run properly. The capacitors had stopped and it was just stalling all over the place. It was just really, really bad. And considering the 6 pickups, I don't have capacitors in most of my locos and they seem to run with 6 pickups no problem, but this just wasn't running. And I didn't know what to do. Q panicked, called to Digitrains, who were wonderful. They suggested a reset, tried that, didn't work, and he said you'll probably have to take it apart and one of the wires has come off. He was right. I had a floating blue wire for the capacitor. Soldered that back on, managed to break 5 or 6 other wires on the plug. Oh, it has been, what can I say? That was panicked. And then a little voicemail popped up. What happened? Well, cameraman had COVID. Brilliant. So they came the next day instead, which gave me the evening to get the 009 running a bit better. And this is the trouble with big projects. I had a decision halfway through the dock area. I wasn't happy how the stone was sitting. Do I just soldier on because I don't really have any time spare, or do I stop and do it? I got up at 5 a.m. to fix it one day. It really was that bad. It's just, you lie in bed and you think, I may as well get up as worry about it. And that's really what this project has become, quite pressured. So I'm now off for 2 or 3 weeks, trying to get rid of the kind of tiredness headache and get some rest. And my new job is starting. So that could be starting in the next few weeks as well. So I'm now working on that. I just feel like, oh, I could do with a holiday. Anyway, back to the chats. Elgin is roasting. Yeah, it must be. James says most homes don't have attic fans anymore to move the air. We've never had attic fans. Just not something I've heard of. Mark Warren from Scale Mark Models just come back from Norfolk a few hours ago. Much cooler there than Northamptonshire. I'm guessing they've got a bit of an easterly breeze there, which helps. And it is flat, so the breeze flows. Timber's got blown insulation, but its smallest package, huge, and £40. You could probably make a money splitting that up into smaller packs and selling it somehow, like fairs or something, you know, like exhibitions. Andy T generated 34.4 kilowatts from his solar panels while only drawing 2 kilowatts from the grid today. You are doing well. You'll be selling it back to them. Cellulose insulations, anyway. So Stephen uses home-based wood filler instead of sculptor mould. I like the weight of sculptor mould, so I've been intrigued to know how heavy the wood filler is. And also I put it on quite high. Norm, what a nightmare. Yeah, I presume you're now onto my whole saga of Port Dinorwic getting done in 8 weeks. It was supposed to be an 18-month build that I was going to do, just little and that. I mean, with my new job starting, I'm not worried that it's done. I'm actually pleased. I've still got to do the final photos and do a video of me taking the final photos for another video. So there's a little bit to do and it's clogging up my workbench at the moment, and I want to get on with my Second Dynasty shuttle that I said I'd print for Ben. He's got a Kickstarter going and it finishes in something like 8 days. So I want to get it built tomorrow. I'm actually about to put a reprint of one section on because someone's redesigned the part and I like the look of it better. So that'll go overnight, 15 hours, and then I've got one more part to print tomorrow and it's done. So I've got to get Port Dinorwic done, but I'm going to the cinema in the afternoon. I'm determined to at least carve something of a holiday out of my holiday because, let's face it, it's not a holiday otherwise. So what else have we got in chat? Dig was amazed at how quickly you managed to do the entire layout. Dig has been seeing it on Discord because he's on the Patreon Discord, and if you go on there, I've been putting up all the whip photos as I've been going along. And it's done, and I'm not going to show much, and I've just been carving up my 5 terabytes of footage and it's still not finished. 5 terabytes of footage all kind of put up and on the cloud, and it's going to sit there now for 9 or 10 months whilst I do quite a few videos off it, because I'll do the live streams. I'll probably do some technique videos on some of the areas a little bit more detailed, just quick sort of 5-minute technique videos, and just let all that go. Because quite frankly, it's been a huge amount of work, and if I'm in a full-time job, video editing is about all I have time for rather than building. And I've got one collaboration I've got coming up, I've agreed, and I'm doing Ben's space shuttle. So I've got quite a lot on the plate still, considering I wanted to stop. And then I've got my own stuff I want to do. Loads to do. I'm looking forward to doing the collaboration with Rebel Base Bill James. We're doing he's done a Scorpionet droid, and I'm going to do a Tatooine streak to go with it, which will be good. So where are we? Sparky, holiday. I always need to good rest after holiday to always take the last 2 days at home recouping. The trouble with being at home is I will just work, because my home is my office, is being at work. First day off, putting prints to go. I've got to tidy the house. I've still got to do all my accounts, my company accounts, my VAT return for last quarter end. So I don't have holidays since I went self-employed. I even work Christmas Day. I just don't get holidays unless I'm not at home. So I'm trying to go out in the afternoon to stop myself working all day, because it is just one of the downsides. When your hobby is your job and you sit down at the weekend and think, what shall I do? You think, I'll do my hobby. Oh, that's modelling. And I love it. I love it still, but it just means it becomes a grind. So I've downloaded Star Wars Fallen Order, but I just haven't felt like playing a video game even. I'm just tired. I need a bit of a break, and I need to get myself sorted for my new job, which is very exciting. And when the dotted line is signed, I will tell you all about it. Wilson says it's too hot for the doggies. Going to wait till 10 p.m. to take them walkies, I think. I'm not sure they'll leave and thank you then. Depends how shaggy they are, I guess. James says, we've got balloon insulation for days in the States in Canada. Let me know and I'll get it to you. No, it's fine. I'll find someone. I've got actually quite a lot of bags of sculptor mould still, so I'm not too bothered about replacing it. I'll cross that bridge when I need to. And I've always still got sculptor mould off Amazon. It's just always there. It may not be cheap, but I'm trying to use a bit less and to fill the gaps a bit more. Now use it more as a skim coat. But I used it on Port Dinorwic. It's still the best thing for many different projects that I do. Andy T asked what I'm going to see at the cinema. Thor, Love and Thunder. I actually want to see Lightyear as well, but I'm going with my mum. My sister comes out, my sister's handicapped, so mum has to pick her up at 3:30, and it's just timing. So that's the one we can fit in. It's in 3D, because it's the only one that started early enough for us to get out in time. So we've got our 3D glasses ready. I haven't seen a movie in 3D in years, so it'll be like goggle over the top effect. And then we've got loads of people still on sculptor mould. Alan Barker says, evening all, sorry I missed the start, Kathy. I was busy melting in the heat. I am not surprised. James Avery says you can use shredded in a blender newspaper. People actually use toilet roll as well. I think it's a bit paler. Stephen Cameron says, being self-employed, you're never off duty. True, right? Tim says, you aren't so much working from home as living at work when your hobby is your job. Yes, but I am looking forward to getting a workshop. One of the things I've noticed in the 3 years I've been working, or 2 years I've been working at home, I've had non-stop headaches. I never normally get headaches. I've had nothing but headaches. And I think it's down to the resin, the dust, everything just in the house. So earlier this year I bought some air purifiers. Yesterday we went to a garden centre and I bought some plants because they're supposed to be good at taking toxins out. So I'm looking forward to perhaps putting some stuff in a workshop, but I also need to clean and tidy everything, because this isn't healthy stuff to live in all the time. If you're doing loads of resin dust, 3D printing, that just builds up, and I think it gets at you. So it is something to worry about and watch. I guess because I'm doing it all day. At this time of year, it doesn't feel as bad because I can open the door and I can get fresh air in, as long as it's not too hot outside. But it can really go on otherwise. But nearing past, I'm going to put the video to go and shrink myself into the small size. And this is so I've finished it. And so I've just chunked it up into various different sections. So actually, some of this video, this video takes place across about 6 weeks, but it's not all of the 6 weeks by a long way. So you'll see it kind of build, and you'll be like, oh, she hasn't gone through that yet. No, it's fine. I haven't gone through that yet. I will go through that when we do that particular section. It's just one of those things. Now, last time we talked about 3D printing. This time I'm taking those 3D prints, not all of them, just the buildings and the walls on this particular video. And in this case, I did actually screw up my sizing on this. The first 3D print I did, I smushed so it was narrower, and I was able to get the lorry through. And when I finally printed it, I forgot to smush it because I took the top off and printed it in a whale. So when I release them as a pack later on, so other people can have the buildings when I get round to it, they'll print on a sort of Saturn or whale size. And yeah, what can I say? I couldn't get the lorry through the gate. Couldn't even get the gate on the gate. So I had to use the old one. So this is actually this one that I used that's here now, and the new one that I printed just is on my side, so it's just sat there. I've got all of them. I've got about a spare one that was a bad print or something. So what I'm doing in this video, it's time lapse of me going through removing the supports. Now in later videos or in later builds, I just put these in hot water and removed them. It's a new technique. It does leave little divots. But on the next sort of lot of printing that I did, I actually just put them in hot water, which I then did in video. So I've got a big tub in the kitchen sink. I run it full of as hot as I can bear, and you just flex the supports and they pop off. They do leave little divots, and when they're onto the guttering is smaller and finer than the supports. So I will definitely cut those off with these fine nippers. They're Despise side cutters, very, very nice nippers. So I'll take those off. And this I had been curing for 10 minutes because it's 80% Siriatech fast and 20% tenacious, and tenacious needs curing for 10 minutes. I pinged something when I was taking these off into the side of one of the buildings, and it shattered the guttering. So I've started to cure them for only 2 minutes. So lots of videos of me removing supports. It is easier if you do it in the hot water, but you know, it's much quicker, especially the interior bits where it's not really a problem at all. So whilst that's going, let's see what chat's saying. Tim Williams says, I know the feeling about holidays. I'm self-employed too. My phone went off halfway down a ski run in March with a problem nobody else could solve. That is a nightmare. I'm actually looking forward to going back into employment. Not that it won't be hectic and I won't work as busy as this, but that it will be easier to draw a line between my hobby, which will now be YouTube, and my job, which will be designing a miniature world, which is, you know, very scary, is all I can say. It's very, very scary, but it's going to be great fun. So I was down in London. I actually stayed at my boss's house. Very, very nice set of guys that I'm going to be working with. And I'm really excited to be on that. So we've got Alan Barker saying hi to everyone. Norm, I was self-employed and everyone thought I could do as I pleased. No. Always putting out fires, glad to be retired. I've got to say, if I went self-employed again, I didn't earn enough money this time round. I mean, the book is now starting to pay, which was a bit of a shock. I thought my advance would be all I got, but it is starting to pay a bit. And I know what I would do the second time around. I wouldn't rely on YouTube. And I never planned to rely on YouTube. That just happened because lockdown hit and took out 2 or 3 of the other paying gigs I had planned. It did do a lot of damage to sort of my plans. But I ended up relying on YouTube, and I'd never do that again because I don't earn enough off YouTube to make it worthwhile. But it takes a lot of time to do. It can be a full-time job to do this sort of size of video or diorama that I do, and to make enough money. Definitely would rethink about it. But I fully expect to go self-employed once this gig is up. But who knows? You never know what life brings. I certainly wasn't expecting this when it came along. Hello Aidan. 5 degrees C here in Brisbane, says Monham. Oh, Monique, that sounds lovely. I'd rather be too cold than too hot. I don't mind the hot weather, but I like layering up. Anita asks, could it be eye strain as well? It's an interesting question. I put it down to tiredness and stress a lot at the beginning because I was stressed that I wasn't earning enough money. And then, I don't know, I had my glasses checked over lockdown at some point. So I have had them done in the last year. No change to prescription or anything. It's a good point though. Ooh. Right. Aidan. Hi Kathy, I'm new to model railway building. Can you please recommend some shows where I can gain some inspiration? Thanks. I think it depends where you are in the country. So I'm in the Midlands and I don't know what shows are showing this year because I've been working every weekend so far. Sad, isn't it? And when I go into the new world of having a job, I'll be busy doing YouTube at weekends. So the first show I'm going to make is Worley. So I'll ask people to pop suggestions, but if you just say where you are, and I can see people are already putting some in there, then people might be able to tell you the best local ones. I always used to think Nottingham was very good. I don't even know if it's still running. Derby was what got me into modelling. I don't even know if it's still running. It's hard to suggest, as I don't know what's kicked up and started off again, and I know some have folded over lockdown. But Worley is the one I go to in November, and it's always really good. It's probably the biggest as well. So Mark Warren, Scale Mark Models, I've now got my workshop and what a difference it has made. So is your workshop in your house or is it somewhere else, Mark? Because that's the question. Mine's going to be in the loft. I'm going to convert it, but I can shut the door and leave it up there. But I'm still going to leave the 3D printing downstairs. So it means I'll be working in a workshop where the chemicals are less noxious. And the noxious chemicals will all be downstairs where I can shut them off in a door and leave 2 extractor fans going. Or if it's the summer, I can actually open the door into the outside, which is in the kitchen, and let that just blow through. That's kind of the idea. But Norm says chemicals are toxic. You need good air cleaners, filters. You really do. You really do. Tim says, I might have to try air purifiers. I have similar issues and less space than you. So Tim, I've noticed they did make a difference, but I don't know how long they last before they clog up, and that'll be the interesting thing. I also have 2 extractor fans, and I've just installing this massive fan. I mean, it's this big, that was in my loft into my sort of round my airbrush booth to try and suck that out quicker, because that's where the smells really come in. I always try and spray rattle cans outside. So I just need to go back to this. I actually printed this wall in filament. You can see it looks really different to the rest. For a start, it's grey. And I printed it in 3 pieces. I didn't think I filled it very well, but I knew I was going to have trees in front of it, so I wasn't that worried. This is just Tamiya putty, which I put on. It normally sinks as it dries. It's a funny smelling one. It's a solvent one, but it dries quite quickly. Dries much quicker than an acrylic one, and it does sand really nicely, as you can see. But this is the kind of dust I'm talking about. This is the kind of dust that just gets everywhere. And I hoover it up as soon as I've done it. And if I'm doing a lot of it, I'll put a mask on. But this stuff just easily there. But at least at the moment, I can have the door open next to me, because there's a door right to my left as I'm sitting doing this work. So I really wanted to print something in filament just to show, and that was so big. And resin does get expensive, so it is useful to have the ability to do filament as well for bigger ones. So I sprayed it with just here, it's just Halford's grey primer. You can still see those gaps, so I refilled them a bit and just left it there. As I said, it's going to have greenery at the top and trees at the bottom, so it's no great shakes if it's not properly filled. In fact, you hardly see any of it by the end. Right, so Aidan Bartley, have a look at Kathy's channels. There are lots of useful videos. Yes, do go and look at my channel. There are lots of useful videos, please. John asked, have I had my eyes taste Leslie? Last year, so I did wonder that, but I think it was last year. And the glasses didn't change. So Andy's saying North Somerset Model Show today at the Helicopter Museum in Weston-super-Mare was just amazing, so well attended. That's good to hear, because I hear some have been a bit off still. Andy T, great tip with hot water. Tim Williams says, I'll have to give the hot water a try. I've not heard of that one. Works really well with light supports. if you're doing a delicate structure and you've got heavy supports like I have for my bigger printers, I do recommend clipping the delicate areas and then using hot water. Do it before you've cured it. I haven't said that. Do it before you've cured it and they're still flexible and they'll just off. If you've cured them, you have to clip and then they'll shatter slightly perhaps. But if you do it before you've cured, they've got that flex and they'll just pop off. It's great. James says, having watched you for 3 years or so now, I have no doubt you'll just do fine in a new job. Thank you, James. It's a big thing. It's a change of career completely. I'm used to running departments in finance, but running a whole design studio is a completely new job. And I've got to set it up as well. So I was having a bit of a sort of panics last week about it, but I think it'll be fine. I'll get there. I just need to get settled in. Hi, Plumber33. What's up? David Orff also can relate to self-employment and holidays. He sorted her problems while sitting on the platform of an alpine station enjoying the view, but you never have spare time. I agree with that, and I love modelling, but yeah, it's just not great. Some of these, if you see in their brown, I've actually got a brown spray can, so I just primed them with a brown spray can. It's a graffiti paint. It works as well as primer. And then I've just gone over and painted them with various colours. These are craft acrylics, not Vallejo. For this size, I would always use craft acrylics for price reasons. I use a lot of natural, a lot of raw umber, maybe a tad of burnt sienna. There was a little bit of Wedgwood blue in there and some mid-grey. That's mostly it. Payne's grey for all the dark. Oh, you can see how bad that seam is. Just don't worry, it won't show. Promise. So Timber says, best flying place to find exhibitions local to you is this, and he's given the link, which is a great place. I used to look at it, I haven't looked at it in ages. And the magazines normally have a list in them as well, which you can look in Smith's to see if they have it before buying. So Mark's workshop is his garage, so that's good. That gets it out of the way a bit. Stephen Cameron, well, we're really jumping around conversations here, aren't we? The last movie he saw in the cinema was Top Gun Maverick. Kind of bugged me, they had all the cool nicknames, Rooster, Payback, and what do I get? Circles, charming. Yeah, I'm a girl, we didn't do nicknames quite the same. Though I did have a friend we always called Soggy, because there were two Sarahs. So, there we go. Tim says the next Midland show is Bourneville on the 27th of August, local to him. But he can't go due to being, he's done the full size things. Mark Wilson asked, what is the spray glue that I used on those walls to fix the parts together? It's not spray glue, it's super glue. I use super glue to glue resin and filament together. You can't use anything else really. Super glue is perfect for this sort of thing. It's just a bit brittle at times, so if you drop things, it's more likely to shatter than some other types of glue. But if I'm worried about gluing, and you'll see I do this a lot on the buildings, I will often do two glues. I will use super glue, for instance, that, and I'll put a bit of white glue in there as well, not, in slightly different spots, just to make sure I've got two glues on there. If you're doing epoxy, it's a great tip, because epoxy doesn't set up straight away, so you can spray the super glue with a zapper, an accelerator, and just set it straight away, and then the epoxy will go off in the right position. So I often do that. And the zap is great if you're putting small parts on for super glue. Spray the part you're putting onto, add a bit of super glue to your part, touch them, and they're set. So that is really useful. I do that a lot. So that's interesting. Mark says he's fitted new kitchen units in there. I am putting kitchen units in my loft. I've worked out I can get about 30 of the things in there, 20 base units and 14 top units at the moment. Obviously I'm not going to get them until I've measured it properly. And then he's got loads of electrical points. I did it because of the resin printers I'm using. I actually have my resin printers downstairs, and they're in a little 3D print room, which is, I can shut the door and just put the extractor fan on, which in the winter I tend not to because of the heating. I let the next room heat it, but I think if it's going to be a problem with headaches, I will just think, and I've got an air purifier in there as well. So anyway, one of the things that someone suggested for upstairs was, instead of putting in electric points, which I'm going to do, but instead of fixing them, I use the things they have in offices, which are like white plastic, and you can cut them up and move things around quite easily. So if I want to add an extra electric point, it would be very easy to add it. Otherwise, I'm going to be putting them every 3 foot or so. So this is an oil wash. It's a sludgy green. Oh, actually, no, sorry. This was an enamel wash and I used white spirit. It's one of the winter streaking grime, I think it is. It's one of my favourite colours. I think it's AK Interactive. And I used that as a wash on here for enamel washes. We'll talk about washes in a minute because I had a lot of problems with my washes. Not the enamel ones, but the oil ones. And this is it. I just covered everything with a wash to do the mortar. The mortar's probably not this dark in reality. Probably could have been a bit lighter, but it had set up and it was there, so I just left it. It's quite hard to judge some of these washes. They do dry completely. And in a second, when you see me painting the roofs of the sort of buildings, the colours dry and wet are just completely different on the paint. Blue is just such a different colour when it dries. So here we go. At this point, I've now put it in place, put the sculptor mould and ground on, which we'll do in a different. So I think this is a slimy grime I'm just going over with, slimy grime dark around the bottom. And I'm doing it just to cover the plaster that I got on it. I could have washed it off and you can just get the plaster off with a damp cloth, it's quite easy. But I just slimy grimed it. And these are the rest of my buildings, just all getting prepped. So it's the same prepping as, just had a little interlude for the walls because somehow I put the buildings at the start of walls instead of at the start of buildings. Anyway, we're back to prepping buildings. And what I'm doing is sanding off all the nubs of the supports that are at the base. They leave little dimples and divots and I'm just sanding them flat so the buildings will sit flat. Okay. Oh, it was a super glue kicker. George21, thank you. So Stephen says if you're up north in Scotland, his club is having one. Scale Model World Telford in November, largest scale modelling show in the world. This will be my 11th year already and have my hotel booked for 3 years in advance. Wow. I went there once and I think because I did model railways at the time, I wasn't looking to buy anything that they shifted in their boxes. And I think they were judging, so I didn't really get to see the models. So I found it quite an interesting show for stuff to look at by comparison to a train show. So in model railways, it's just so much to look at and so much to buy if you're modelling it. And then I went to Telford and because I wasn't actually modelling the kind of things on sale, I didn't really spend as much time looking at the models as I should have. Couldn't get into many of the ones except the ones around the edges. And I did feel like there wasn't as much to see. And then I went to Comic-Con and I realised model railways probably give you the most bang for your buck for stuff to see at an exhibition because they're big displays and there's always something moving. So definitely very, very different. I mean, Star Trek Destination is hardly anything to see. You're mostly there to buy stuff or get signatures and meet the crew or go to clinics and talks. There's hardly anything to actually see there. So it's been interesting to compare them over the years. But no, scale model world, massive. Massive. James Avery asks, have I tried sprue glue to fill gaps with? No, I haven't because this isn't that type of plastic. So it's I'd rather use Tamiya putty personally. It's a different type. If I was using it on ABS, I probably would. I just never bothered making it. I've always just used a putty. It could just be me being lazy, but it's easier, I guess. Mary 187, the 3D printed wall looks great, will be much better than printed cardboard. It actually ended up flattened out quite a bit because I smushed it front to back to get it in when I designed it. Because I designed the actual size and then I shrunk it to fit. So if you look at the stairs, they're really, really shallow stairs. They just go up and it's all right because you don't really look at it from the side. There's like parapets and walls. So you tend to look at it straight on. So you don't notice how, you know, poor somebody walking up there, they've only got like 1/4 of an inch to stand on before they want to the next step. But it meant the stones weren't quite as pronounced. So again, they also flattened out, which is probably not a bad thing for the perspective point of view. Where else? I'm still just filing stuff. I tend to use metal files, as you can see, and emery boards. I like the side of the metal file and get a nice sharp point. And all I'm doing at this point really is cleaning off support nubs from the ones that I didn't take off in hot water. The ones at the back, the terrace houses, just needed the underneath sanding flat, but all the nubs are on the back because I was able to do that. But if you've got a 4-sided building, the nubs are always going to be on the side or a back. But because of the orientation, I had to print the one with, say, a porch, they are on the side. So actually it's on the side on both of the near buildings. So they just need sanding back down again. And I'm a bit surprised, I must have dropped one of these. It's all cracked. I think it's that one. It's actually got a huge crack down the side. So I didn't even notice it, but I know I dropped one. So I guess it did crack when I dropped it. It didn't shatter, just cracked. Just a relief. Right. So David says, David Nelson, he's using my videos and converting them to smaller scale applications as building dioramas of World War II airfields. Just entered the world of 3D printing. It's like magic. Well, it is, yeah. It's a bit of a learning curve at first about how to do things, but it is just, it's so accessible. I look at this diorama and you can just see the amount of peach floating around on everything. And even in the background there, you can see the bollards that are already on there that will be in a later video. Those bollards were 3D printed. I've got 2 different styles of bollards. I've got the bridge stuff. There's just so much 3D printed in here. I almost 3D printed the telegraph poles, but in the end I used hardwood poles. They warped. Really not happy. So, hey, stick to 3D printing. The walls are really magnificent, big piece when all connected. It is, it did look really good. I'll put the design out for it. I just felt it didn't join together that well. And the reason is, on filament, as the printer goes around the corner, it rounds it slightly. So it just leaves a bit of a line. But there we go. James Avery says I put streak and grime on everything. I do love streak and grime. I like the winter streak and grime better than the streak and grime for colour, but it is amazing stuff. I use it all the time. And slimy grime dark and slimy grime light, they keep going off in the bottles. I've had a couple of slimy grimes go off and I keep rebuying them because they're just great colours. So Simon's got to go. Oh, Simon's getting up at 3 a.m. So nice to have had you. Sorry you couldn't stay long, but enjoy tomorrow. And yeah, if you've got any questions, just put them on the stream. Wow. So John Crooks asked, Kathy, how did you do in selling the old stock for sale? I passed around your list to a few other modellers, even though I didn't see anything on it for myself. Yeah, I got rid of it all to a dealer. It's on my, I ripped out my layout video. You can see it all being loaded up. I think I've got 21 crates on the first list, and then I put another 10 or so crates on, so they're probably like 30 odd fold flat crates, 31 or 32 fold flat crates it was in the end that went off, plus assorted loose buildings and things like that. So all gone. Felt really good to get the space back, but now I'm having to get the rest of the stuff out of the loft because I've still got other stuff up there. I had sci-fi kits. I've got my dad's old Hornby 00, so all that needs to come out. I need to get all the trees off the layout and all the electric gubbins underneath, and I need to do it in the next few weeks really, because once I start my job I don't think I'll have time, and I've nowhere to put it because everywhere's full. Just everywhere is full of stuff already that's already come out the loft, so I need to get rid of some more stuff. As an interest, I 3D printed on filament this base, so that because these are slightly stepped up, these terraces, just so I had something nice and firm to sit them on. Once you get a 3D printer, you find ways to use just them all the time. I could have built that from card or styrene or something, but no, it's just easier to just 3D print it. And it is a spray zapper I'm using just to zap it off straight away. It's just a builder's one. I don't buy expensive ones. So now, finally, we're on to painting. So I started off, I primed anything that looks brown. I have a brown primer, spray primer, and I also have a grey spray primer. So for this, I primed as close as I could to the slate colour. And it's basically Mr. Surface's lacquer primer. Mr. Surfacer 1500 plus blue, it's actually gloss paint, and a bit of green and a bit of black. It came out looking way too green though. I think Mr. Surfacer actually has a slight greenish tint to it perhaps anyway. And I put a lot of blue in, it just never seemed to blue up. I fix that with the washes in a minute, but it is so useful. I pre-mix all my lacquers, and I pre-mixed a whole big bottle of this because I knew there were slate piles, there were slate loads. I just thought there's going to be more slate. So I pre-mixed a whole slate, and I didn't use it all, not by a long way, but I used probably 2/3 of it over the time. And all the buildings got primed in slate. If they were, certainly the roofs, I didn't do I think I did, I can't remember what colour I did these, we'll watch in a sec, but I didn't do the walls in grey because they're stone walls here for this building. But I primed all the roofs and all of the slate buildings in this, and I did the sides in a brownish colour. It doesn't matter if it oversplashes, this is just the primer. I primed the bridge in the same colour, and then I painted it a lighter grey at a different point, and then obviously these buildings are all slate, so they can all get primed in exactly this colour all over. So Stephen Cameron went to the Perth show a couple of weeks back. Never bought as much as a track pin or rail joiner. Must be losing it. You are. I'm trying to buy less, but I'm just really bad at it. Really bad at it. The way I avoid buying stuff is by not going to the shops. But instead I've got Amazon. Yeah, very bad Amazon habit. Roy187 said, did you already 3D print rolling stock? I actually bought 3D printed rolling stock from TB on Shapeways. I bought it in 2018, and it's their fine, delicate one. I actually bought a white strong, and I went with a frosted ultra detail, isn't it? But when they're painted up, I can't really tell which one wasn't the strong white one, so you could do it in strong white properly. But Dinorwic has a very specific, only used by it wagon. I've got a whole video. I'm going to talk about rolling stocks. That's all I'm going to say for now, except they were 3D printed, and Tim Williams saved my butt because I couldn't find any wheels. The wheels I had, the axles were too long. I also don't know how you get metal axle wheels into a solid frame. And he saved my bacon by sending me his 3D print wheels for a Dinorwic set of wagons he's done. And I was able to print them, and before I cured them, I flexed them and put them into the wagons, and then I cured them in the wagons. Clever. Don't know how I'll ever get them out. Should I ever want to replace them? I guess snip snip will be the answer. Tim says, I see everything now as a 3D print problem. Yep. I have to stop myself 3D printing everything. I'm actually doing the OMC, the original Mecha contest, and they have a 15% 3D print rule, and I didn't realise that when I started it, and I was like, how do I cope? 3D printing? Only 15%. And it's been really inspirational to try and just do it by hand. It's been really nice, actually. The only downside I'll say is I've run out of time and I haven't got anywhere near it. So I do need to get on with that at some point as well. And I keep picking up other projects in between. So it's due the end of October. I may even be taking a week's holiday just to do my OMC Griffin so I can get it finished. But it is about a 3 or 4 week build. I don't know when it's going to go in. Now I've got a new job. Right. So Stephen says, will there be a video on the spaceship, or is it just a personal project? The only thing that's a personal project you won't get a video on is my cosplay, my Titanfall cosplay. Practically everything else I do is personal projects. I end up putting the video on just because, why not? So I thought the buildings were too green. So this is me painting. It took me a while to get the colours, partly because when they dry incredibly different in colour. This blue looks kind of lilac going on and dries blue. It's shocking what a difference it makes. So I left it to dry, came back and checked it, and it doesn't matter, it's going to get oil washes, but it looks almost pink going on, doesn't it, in this light? And yeah, it dries, that kind of slate blue, very blue. It's really bizarre, just so bizarre, trying to get all that colour in my head matched properly. So no, the spaceship will be on. It's for Second Dynasty, have got their Kickstarter live at the moment. It's only a quick one, so it's only got about 8 days left, so I think there'll be late pledges. So if you want to get it, it will be fine. And it's the first thing he gave me all his previous ones. I bought this, So although I have a copy of it, I have actually bought the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter, you'll get the files at the end of the Kickstarter when the money's cleared. But I've got the review copy. So they one of the guys who's also printing it, who works for them, just changed one of the top pieces, and I agreed. I do like the way he's changed it. So I'm just going to set that to reprint. It was on 99% before I started this of its current print, and then it's just got the landing gear and Gatling guns. And once that's done, I just need to take the photos of Port Dinorwic and I can get on with it. That'll be good. But yeah, there'll definitely be a video on it. John, the stock's gone. All my stock is now gone. The only the stock that I'm keeping has all been sorted. So the stock was the big item because everything had to be reboxed. So everything's now being reboxed, and I have 6 crates of US left, and I've got 1 crate of UK, which doesn't sound like a lot, but what I did was keep small stuff, and those crates are packed. I've still got a huge amount. I've still probably got a couple hundred lines of items. So yeah. James Avery, I can't justify a 3D printer. My pile of shame is such that the wife raises her eyebrows whenever I bring it up. It's difficult. You could say it adds to what you're building. It depends what your pile of shame is made up of. It's definitely, you just end up buying STLs sometimes to 3D print later. The pile of shame is less obvious. It's just files on your computer, easier to hide. So my paint palette, Norm says he likes it. It's actually a Hornby weathering powders container, and I put in a bit of Spontex sponge, which for those in the UK will remember it's a padded sponge you used to do your washing up with. They still sell them. And then it's baking paper, not silicone one, but a baking paper over the top. And you just get the sponge wet and it comes through and keeps the paints workable. It's not as good as the bought ones. The paints go off within a day or two. But yeah. So you can see the supports on the side look really bad. They're not particularly visible in the final project, thankfully, because I probably should have sanded them. But if I'd realised how bad they were, I would have sanded them more. And now it's just a case of painting all of that scalloping on the building. The whole building goes in layers of green, blue, purple, scalloped slate. Yep, a lot to do. When Stephen Cameron says it's Magnum time, I'm guessing he's talking about ice creams, because I had a Magnum for lunch. So caramel, double caramel, good choice for me. So Rory 187, I build with cardboard and styrene, but that's not comparable to what you produce with 3D printing. It isn't, but 3D printing is a, how can I put this? You can get overly obsessed about the details sometimes, and it's not visible. Yeah, I've also, you can see here, I probably didn't record most of me painting the scallops by the look of it, and here I'm just putting black and other details in. It's quite a lot of hand painting of buildings, of all the base colours. All I'm doing here is one base colour, just one base colour. Sometimes I've redone the colour if I've not been happy with it, like the slate roofs, but I'm just doing one base colour, painting any details that need doing. Oh, topping up the water in the paint palette there. So Tim says the latest version of his dual wagon has a strengthened axle box. You can fit the wheels after cutting without too much risk. The TB ones are fragile. I wrote 2 of the 10 fitting metal wheels to those. Yeah, I chipped one and had to glue it back on. Well, actually, no, I think I might just put a blob of super glue on the end, or filler on the end to get it off, because I couldn't find it. I don't know how I dropped it, I think. But yeah, I had to use bendy wheels, which if you buy some American wheels, they're on a plastic axle and metal wheels, they are slightly flexy, but yeah, it was an interesting one. It is hard to get the wheels in, and I don't think my wheels are always completely round. I'm not sure I cleaned all of the supports off as well as I could have. I thought they just all popped off, and I do think that I probably have 1 or 2 that aren't actually printed round, because they were light supports you gave me, Tim. And this printer, if it isn't heavy, will rip them off with all the suction on the bigger build plate. I actually did lose probably half on every batch I printed to not printing. So I had to print 3 batches in the end to get enough. Right. James Avey, my pile of shame is mostly Warhammer and Bandai. My pile of shame is mostly Bandai as well, so I wouldn't worry about it. I don't have any Warhammer. One kit I bought to do a demo with, but I have a lot of Bandai. And I've only built a few of them. It's just time. Tamsin, she would have volunteered to print a review copy of the shuttle, but as my blog doesn't get many views, I don't think it would have generated extra sales. I decided against. Yeah, I mean, Ben was just like, if anybody wants a review copy who has a YouTube or blog, then let me know. And I said to him, do you need me? And he was like, well, you know, if you're on holiday, don't worry. And I was like, no, you've done so much for me. I'll be very, very happy. So I've ended up printing it on my holiday because, you know, Ben does great work and he's been very supportive over the years. I met him doing a YouTube video sponsored for his Traveller campaign. So Traveller Spaceport was my video using his Type S. This is one of his own designs. It's a great design. It's a really, I'm not into 28mm playable. I do have Star Wars Legion, but that's 35mm I think. So I'm going to see if the clone troopers will fit in it without bumping their heads. If they can use the toilet, because it has like toilet and shower and everything inside. It's really cool. Yeah, anytime you need extra hands, give me a shout. Thanks, John. David, I printed a handful of scale rubbish bins, fountains and similar items the other day. Resin costs about 50p to buy online. Would have been over 20 quid. Quite a saving, you can model yourself. There is definitely a saving. When you're getting up to the bigger buildings, it starts costing real money. So I was buying litre after litre of £40 Siriatech and £65 tenacious. I only use 20% tenacious, so it goes a lot further. But when I compare that to how much I'm spending on, say, this massive 28mm, it's a foot big, so it's about, maybe that's a foot. This sort of massive space thing, that will cost 20 quid probably. It's about one roll of filament, he said. And I've used a couple because I finished one off and started another. But it's nothing by comparison to the price of resin. So if you're happy, that's why I did that back wall in filament, because it is so much cheaper. So Digger thinks 3D printing is the way forward for all hobbyists. I don't think it's for all hobbyists, but I do think it's certainly it's another tool that is really important to have in your toolbox. It's got coloured slates on the side here. They don't really show at the end because I weathered this quite heavily and filtered the colour quite a bit, and they weren't very straight, but it actually has the same purple and green, the same colours as on the side. Slates just everywhere. And I didn't want anything to be too bright on this. The whole point of this is it's quite muted in colour, and then the buildings end up looking bright blue in the final thing. So, hey, you know, a bit brighter than I meant them to. So John Crooks, how is everyone enjoying that order Class 55 Deltics? I haven't ordered one, sorry. I don't really do British that often. James Avery says, do not go Warhammer. There's no turning back from that black hole. Do you know, I looked at Warhammer in the shop because I did a tour of Warhammer World with my new job. And it's statues. And I was looking at an Eldar sort of, I don't know, it's about this high. So it's the same size as an MG Bandai kit, Gundam kit. And for the Bandai kit, for 40 or 50 pounds, maybe 60 or 70, maybe 130, depending whether you've got lights and gimmicks in it, but probably for about 50 or 60 for a base one, you would get something that's fully articulated, self-coloured plastic, you don't even need to paint it, and will just click together with no glue. And the Eldar statue was 90 quid at Warhammer, but you can get it for about 70 or 80 online. And it's a statue, it can't move, it can't pose. I was just looking at it and I didn't buy it, even though I like the design, because I was like, this is really fixed. It's really fixed. And I appreciate, the more I do 3D printing and get support marks, warp issues, parts not fitting due to print tolerances, the more I appreciate people like Bandai's plastic kits. 3D printing is brilliant, but it is not the only solution. If I could find a plastic kit for something, I probably would use that, because they're just so much easier to build, the new ones, certainly the Bandai ones. I am not saying that every plastic kit is equal, and certainly the ones coming out of Europe are not a patch on the Japanese ones. Bandai particularly are very, very good. So yeah, But, you know, I wouldn't be without my 3D printing though. Stephen Cameron has a few piles of shame. My piles of shame are now all in boxes, crated up, ready for their new home, wherever that's going to be. Rory 187, I usually use undercarriages, wheel sets and couplings from cheap second-hand Lehman rolling stock. These can't make from styrene or cardboard, of course. Very true. Great. YouTube. It'd be a great time to put ads in. Really? These are only this big, the rolling stock. About 1 inch long. So I don't have anything. It's N scale really, because it's 009. So I use Bachmann wagons for the 00, but these are so small. Sneeze and they'll blow off the track, literally. So I just had nothing. I'm used to American stuff. The couplers are a dream. I love Cadies. Just the wheels are easy to get hold of. I've got piles of them. And then I'm on British and I don't model it and I don't have any supplies of it. I hate British couplings. Don't get me onto these sort of thingies they had with, they were hideous on the 00. You know what I used? I used some Smith's 3-link chains and hooked them over the integrated hooks on the wagons. They're not ever being uncoupled or coupled, so I just left them permanently coupled together. And to make sure the chain stayed on, I used black tack, which is like a sticky black blue tack. Yep, they held on with black tack. Right. Norm agrees with Digger. It's always good to agree with Digger. Tim says, Tim Stringer, the problem is finding somewhere to put a 3D printer for me. That and finding the time to learn how to 3D print and model. It seems like a whole second hobby. It is a second hobby, it certainly is for me. But you can get so much online, you don't actually need to learn to 3D print for the first year or so. I think that's phase 2. Phase 1, I would say, go use other people's designs and, you know, you start using theirs and 3D printing just to get used to it. You could do your figures with it. There's all sorts of things you can do with a 3D printer that would just get used to it, supporting and there's a learning curve, and that way you're only learning one thing at once. You're learning the 3D printer first, and then you worry about learning the actual modelling for the 3D printer after that. And if you're an engineering person, an engineering program like Fusion 360, which is free for hobbyists. If you're into organic, you want to do soft shapes, then Blender is the best one to start with perhaps, but it's very complex. I love Blender now. I've got used to the complexity, but it isn't quick to learn. And even now, every time I watch Blender Secrets, I discover something new I can do that's really basic. You're 21. Do you listen to music or podcasts in the background whilst painting, or do you work in relative silence? If it's really complex and I'm struggling, it's silence. But I go through a mix. I do soundtracks generally. So when I was modelling Halo, I put the Halo soundtrack on. When I'm modelling Transformers, I put the Transformers soundtrack on. I'm that sad. When I was modelling this, I had Top Gun on for a while because I actually owned the album from like school days. So I put Top Gun on for a bit. But at the moment, I'm actually doing podcasts. So I've been listening to Print Your Games, which is all about printing tabletop. I've been listening to the Sprue Cutters Union, Build Sideways, The Cutting Mat. I've got a Plastic Posse to come next. I haven't listened to them. I also put Michael Rinaldi's live streams on. I have to look at them a bit, so I don't put them on as much. But he does 3 or 4 hours a week. So you could fill your life with his, and they're all about oil paint weathering and OPR, which is oil paint rendering. He's such a talented person. I've got some of his books, and he does a mix of everything from railways to Gundam to airplanes to tanks. Really, probably one of the most gifted people in the oil paint arena. So if you want to learn how to use those, go check out his live streams on YouTube. Rinaldi, Rinaldi Studio. Just really, really good. And he's chilled and mellow to listen to. So yeah, I normally have something on because I used to be in an office, I'm used to noise, and I find it a bit quiet here. I mean, there's builders going and mowing lawns and stuff, but I like just having the sound of people talking on. Tim says, you do get a few duds with the wheel prints worth inspecting, but they usually all print without ripping off the plate. Shows how different printers have different properties. Very much so, yeah. If I'd put them in my Anycubic not my Anycubic, my Elegoo Mars little one probably would have printed fine, but that had a clear resin in, and I wanted to use the fast resin because I thought it'd be more robust. Although they both got 20% tenacious, I just thought it was a more robust resin. It's got more flex in it than the Anycubic, and I knew I wanted to flex them into the bottoms. Tim doesn't play anything in his pile of shame. He's majestic. That's good. James Avery, I've waited 19 years to start my trains again. Now the kids are grown and don't think of them as toys anymore. Looking forward to blowing dust off my N-scale Shinkansen. That sounds really exciting. That should be good. Look forward to seeing some of that coming out. Timber says 3D printing has taken over his life. My ventures into hobby printing have turned professional. That's very impressive, and actually my backup plan is to go into 3D printing, but probably not in railways. I like sci-fi, and I find it easier to design for sci-fi. So I'm actually thinking of doing terrain, 3D modular dioramas, so landing pads, hangar bays, things like that you can put things around. But looking at Kickstarter, they don't get a lot of traction. They don't generally get funded, but terrain does. So I might create them in multiple scales. I'm wary of being too general, but yeah, we'll see. That sort of thing flies off in Kickstarter. And having done a bit of a dud career for 2 years, and having a new job coming up, I'm not in a rush to do it, but I do want to make sure what I do works next time. James, they're actually based on pictures. You can see them at the front there. So I can't take any credit for the trim and the colours. I'm trying to copy the picture, and you can just see it at the front of the screen. Yeah, I've been there. I've got photos of the real thing, and then this is a photo from back in the day, just because it's got different views, and some of the buildings have been rebuilt, extended, etc. for modern day. So just make sure I get it right. It's fascinating. I like doing the process, just copying it and doing that research bit. I really love that. I meant to paint those uprights wood coloured, and they ended up grey on the final thing. I realised I'd never done them, so that's it. That's as much as they get, bar a wash. Yep, I should have done those. Have fun, James. Yes, do have fun with your stuff. Row 187. Right, so there's a debate between Tim and Row 187 about they wouldn't like to spend their time at the computer instead of the work table, and I don't want to upset my wife. She doesn't like the idea of melting plastic. So melting plastic is filament, and what you want is even worse for upsetting people, is you actually probably want liquid resin. If you're worried about having liquid resin everywhere, I do recommend getting a wash and cure station, having had one, or thinking very carefully about your washing and curing process, so that you have big vats with lids on, and you're very careful about not touching things and not getting the resin everywhere, because I've got a very sticky sink now which I need to clean out over the next few weeks. It's just one of those things, but it will be resin if you want to get into fine detail stuff first and just start with a small printer. They do create some smells, and that's where they don't go down well with families. And that's where you could put one in an enclosure and vent it externally if you wanted, or if you can find somewhere. But you do better to print above 20 degrees generally. Some people coat fine, but the resins I use are better around about 25, so they probably print perfectly at the moment. And I'll just put a space heater on for a little bit before fan heater, before I set my print to go. I tried hinting the whole bed and van. The prints were just detaching because of variable heat over time, but yeah. So the answer on going to work, so I model all day, I'm at my workbench all day, I do my design work in the evening. So this is where I'm going. It takes over your life. I model all day, I 3D design for my work in the evening. Every day except probably Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I try and have off the evenings, and that's it. So it isn't taking over my workbench time, because I'm still spending as much time at the workbench. What it is doing is filling my evening time. But I've always done stuff like research or spreadsheets or whatever of an evening, mostly research. I love researching, and I love looking at stuff and being on the computer of an evening while having TV on in the background. For me, that's perfect. It isn't moving time from the workbench, because I would have modelled in the day and done this whilst I was at work, I would have done the computer all week of an evening. So I've never found the two conflicted for me because of where I'm spending the time. If I went to 3D printing for my full-time job, obviously I would change that, and I would probably do it by day, have a day design and a day modelling or something, because one of the things of you've got to sell it, so you've actually got, if you're doing 3D prints to sell, you still need to print everything and check it all fits and paint it ready for your final models. So there's still quite a bit of modelling in there. James Avery, they're extremely pricey. That there is that to stem the flow of cash going out in the window with Etsy. 3D printers are so relatively cheap at the moment that I know people just buying the older version as a new version comes out. Someone I was chatting to just bought the Elegoo Saturn at $380, and then the Wash and Cure station was actually more than something around $200. Anyway, between the pair of them, he laid out nearly $600, and that is expensive. That's about £400 or £500, but that's everything, and it should last you years. And if Saturn's the size I used for all of these buildings, so it's a good size, you'll get all of these buildings in there. So it's a big printer for your money. You can get the smaller printers for a couple of $100 and pounds, because they're probably about the same. I think it's relative compared to other tools that I buy and other parts of the hobby. It's actually relatively cheap for what you can then produce. And if you factor that over the £20 you would have spent on detail parts, and I spent thousands on detail parts, I've got whole racks of detail parts. If you compare it to that, then I think it is definitely cost effective over the long run. James says he was stationed in South Korea all of 2020, so he had ready access to the Japanese Bandai store. I might be in Japan next month, and I've told them all we're going to watch the go down, because it's in Diver City where we're going. We're going to go and watch the unicorn do its little. There's a giant life-sized unicorn, life-sized, not my size, as in 2-3 story high, life-size figure of a Gundam, and it moves and lights up. It's a unicorn, which is actually the first Gundam anime I watched, and it's next to the Gundam base store in Japan, 2 blocks from where I'm working. So we are definitely going there if we don't go anywhere else. Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to be picking up a few things that are there, that are exclusives. So in the Bandai world, you can buy almost everything over the world, but you can only buy of the base lines. But they put all the exciting stuff out in premium lines that you can only really get in Japan, and everywhere else it's double the price, hard to order, and they're limiting it because there's so many scalpers, which makes it even harder, ironically, to get, because a lot of the shops in the UK especially don't get premium Bandai. So I will definitely be going into Gundam base and seeing what I can pick up there, and taking loads of photos as well. You will get a travelogue from Japan if I go there, which may be Gundam heavy, because that's very exciting about Japan, but I'm hoping we can also see a bullet train and a few other things and go on a subway and things like that. So it should be good. Should be good. Stephen says Mary has a small selection of Z scale stock. Talk about fiddly. It's great for big landscapes, but I wouldn't cope with Z scale. We used to invite somebody who did Z scale to our Arden Rail show when we ran it, and he had drive-in movie theatres. Oh, it was beautiful, but it was so small, so small. I wouldn't want to do it. Wouldn't want to do it at all. It is a dark grey on the windows, Norm. I don't like to use black ever, so it's black grey by Vallejo. It's just off black. I feel everything that you see that is black here is black grey. It's not black. I rarely use the Mars blacks or the lamp blacks. They're just too black on a model. And over time, black fades, and I can't put a shadow on something if it's already black. So I've always used black grey from Vallejo. It's my favourite colour. I've got like 3 bottles of it, all 3 mostly empty, and it's great. So I would definitely recommend using that. And then if you need to put a shadow on, at least you can go slightly darker on it. It's not far off black, but yeah. And I ummed and ahed about painting in some sort of interiors. They just look dark grey in the photos mostly. You can't really see inside. I wondered about painting on some curtains. I just ran out of time more than anything else. If I'd had more time, I probably might have done it. But realistically, I've just left them as this dark grey. Could have gone a bit lighter, I think, with hindsight. Just to, you know, to make them less glaring. Maybe a lighter grey. When you see them all finished at the end, you'll have to let me know what you think. I might have gone lighter grey with hindsight. Not light grey, but just slightly lighter than this. But yeah. John Crooks, I'd like you to do a Blade Runner sci-fi scene with hovering police car. You know, I don't like Blade Runner. 2049 was really long, and I never really got the original one. I think I was just the wrong age when it came out. But I really like the aesthetic of Blade Runner. And I had this tuk-tuk, quite a large tuk-tuk, and I dropped it on the floor, taking it out of the loft, and the wheels just shattered. Hover tuk-tuk. So you might get a hover tuk-tuk coming in a neon alley one day, but I'm not promising it anytime soon. My plans for the 3D printing do involve doing sort of a cyberpunk city eventually. So there will definitely be some cyberpunk in the future, but it'll be more cyberpunk based on Blade Runner rather than a specific Blade Runner scene, because I'm just not that keen on it. I don't know why. Digger, it's going to be an awesome trip to Japan. Let's hope it comes off, but I've got to go out and see our supplier there. Haha. Tim was reminding everyone there's 74 people watching. It's down to 67, it says now. And there are only 47 likes. Please show your appreciation. Apparently YouTube does pay attention to these things. So please tick. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe and hit the bell button and do all those other things I'm supposed to remind you of every 20 minutes. Thanks. Thanks, Mark, for the good luck in my new job. I am looking forward to it. And have a... my next stream will be second week of August, and I think it will be all about the dock area, because I spent a lot of time doing the dock scene front and a bit of debate about is it worth it and the techniques I used for modelling the dock front. So that will be that one. So James would like to see a Bandai 1 to 144 Millennium Falcon build from you. I've built two, one with lights, one without, and it makes a wonderful diorama. I'd love to do it. I've actually got a Revel Millennium Falcon already built up somewhere upstairs or in a pile to be sorted, and I think it's not, I've just got so much to do. I don't know where to start on my to-do list. It's not on my list at the moment, but I wanted to, it was on my list at one point. I wanted to do the asteroid mouth scene with it coming out with the mouth kind of coming towards it sort of thing. And I probably would do it smaller though, the 144th. Probably would do it quite a bit smaller, so I could get the asteroid as like something like that. But that would be really cool. I would like to do that. So Stephen says the reason for the Z scale was she built 1/12 scale doll's house, and the Z scale was to represent a garden railway. Nice. Whew. Right, more reminders to like and subscribe. Hello to the creative model at HO. Tim Stringer, of course YouTube pays attention to how many people are watching and liking. You need to know how many people to suggest you run ads to. They keep suggesting it. I've never had them suggest ads by putting it over the top of the chat before. That's really bizarre. It's obviously a new thing. And how do you manually add ads when you're doing this? Or are you supposed to just write the timestamp down and go back and add? I just leave it the live streams to these guys to sort. They can do it. So I'm still painting. This background building, ironically, it's less than the 100th scale. So I have played with scale a bit on these. It's important not to consider that 1 to 87 or 1 to 76, whether you're HO or 00, is the only scale that should be on your model. There's certainly the front buildings need to be that, but once you're beyond those front buildings, I almost feel like smaller is better. And I actually model in full size in Blender. So when I export it, it exports out as a factor of 10. It's always out, and it always has to auto scale up a bit, but it comes out at 100th. And sometimes I forget and I just printed at 100th. I did that with this building the first time. And I actually printed 100th of that big slate building because I got the scale wrong. But this building here and the one to the left they're 100th. They're just 100th. And actually I think the one to the left was too big at 100th. So it actually went down smaller. It's probably 120th. It does look small. It is supposed to be further back. Yeah, this was too yellow. But you know, it is just, it's not set in stone when you're doing 3D printing that you have to print the scale it comes in. You can easily make things smaller or bigger a little bit. When you make them smaller, you have to watch things don't become too fine. But other than that, you know, you can shrink up and down, quite a bit of leeway. And things to note when you're looking at this building. Do those chimneys look small to you? I thought maybe Blender had shrunk them by 1/10, but then when I tried to size them up by 10, they looked massive. But they were way too small. I don't know, they just look wrong. They look really big on the buildings, and here they just look small. So in a minute you'll see I've actually reprinted some little shells to go around the outside of bigger chimneys, which I then glue over the top. You know, just one of those things. Tricks of the trade. If you're in doubt, it doesn't work, glue something over the top. Does 3D printed plastic not need to be primed before you paint it? I don't know, I prime everything, so everything is always primed. I don't find that paint sticks without priming, certainly acrylic paints. If you saw a bit of peach still, that was the back, so I didn't bother priming it because I was holding it by it, and I just didn't prime the very back centre. And I haven't primed the backs of them, which is why they're still peach, but I prime everything. This was all primed in the various paint colours at the beginning that I was putting on it, grey and the sort of slate colour. But yeah, I would prime everything. If quite often, and certainly for the spaceship I was printing, that will be done with Rattlecan, Halford's Grey Automotive Primer, or a Tamiya Fine Surface Primer, if that's a better colour for the final. I've also got Tamiya Red Oxide Primer, which is great for priming brick buildings. I've got the black spray paint. Because they're all lacquers, I feel they stick as well as a primer. So I will happily spray with their black spray paint as a primer as well. And I will often spray a mix of primer and colour if I'm going to hand paint details, etc. Just to get closer to the base colour, which is what I did on the slate. But yeah, I would always prime everything. Also, some prints, no matter how well you wash them, are always just slightly tacky, and I do like to prime them in with a bit of lacquer. It's and I always use a lacquer primer because it sticks better. Stephen says smaller scale can enforce perspective. I'm totally right. I'm a big believer in forcing perspective. And then Monique says she doesn't print her 3D printed buildings. Well, I always prime mine. Everyone's different. If your paint you're using is sticking, it's not a problem. But I find my acrylics bead on the surface quite badly sometimes. And also, before I got my wash and cure station, some of my prints were just tad tacky. Now I've got it, I don't find that's a problem at all. But it is useful to prime. Depends what you're doing as well. For buildings that are just going to be sat on the back and never touched, the paint doesn't need to adhere as well. But if you're doing rolling stock or anything that is going to be handled a lot and might be worn, then priming just is another layer of protection. James says, do you find with resin prints some paints don't just lay down well? And that's why I prime. When I order the prints, I always clean them, but sometimes I find my primer has a hard time, especially Tamiya flat black. So for my shapeways prints, I gave them a alcohol bath first because they come with a wax, and they all went bright white. And I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done isopropyl alcohol. But they all painted up fine and haven't chipped, and I have scrubbed them, and they've gone down to the base plastic in one place. But when I do the rolling stock, I hairspray chip them with lacquer paints, and that is hard because lacquer is tough, and I was using a toothbrush on them, and I barely shifted the primer. So I don't know whether that isopropyl alcohol coat worked, but my way of treating things, if I've been working on a kit a lot, not 3D prints that much because I tend to have already got everything that I needed in them. But if I've been working on a kit a lot, these are the extra chimneys, and there's actually 2 chimneys for the smaller building, the ultra small reduced size one because I forgot to put the chimneys on when I printed it. And at the back you can see there's a couple of sheds and other things that were just small little buildings that dotted around that don't really feature much in the videos because they're just extra little details. One of those, I've actually got a spare one, but the one you can just see next to me is, I think it's like a lifebuoy shed or something. It's at the front of the dock, and then there's a wood shed at the back, and it's actually a bit of the bridge at the nearest bit there and peach still. And all I do to paint these is I clean them up and I put them on masking tape, just sort of secured at the ends, and I sprayed these. It might have been the Tamiya primer actually because it was finer and it was nice weather outside, so I could spray outside, and I just sprayed them with that Tamiya fine primer and took them outside and did them, and then brought them back in and hand painted them, except for the bridge one, which would have got painted with the bridge, which went a sort of bluey grey, the sort of bridge colour. But yeah, definitely I find priming has been fine with this type of 3D print, and with filament as well, but yeah, I've not had a problem. So what kind of resin prints? Is it shapeways, in which case they can be waxy, so maybe the isopropyl alcohol needs a bit of a Google to see if it's the right thing, but maybe it is something like that. The Creative Modeler, HO. I love Blender. When I'm not working on videos, I make video game assets in Blender. I wish I had time to do that. I do love Blender. I spend a lot of time with it. I'm very happy to spend every evening modelling. I love working on models. I love designing stuff. You know, even if I didn't, and there's loads of things I've designed that never got printed even. I just love the whole creation, designing type of process. John Crook says, I do prefer the original Blade Runner. It would be nice to see that someday from you. Seeing your talented hands at work, you would make it more real than real. Oh. Yeah, I loved the orange scenes from 2049. I've not rewatched it. I couldn't work out what was happening at the end. I'm like, are they by the sea? It's ever so dark. No. But yeah, that original one set the tone for all future sci-fi movies, really. Everything's based off it. And I do love neon cyberpunk. Yeah, chimney prosthetics, Norm. That's what it needed. Here they are getting painted. I think I made a couple extra, so I only needed 4 to go on. But there we go. And then John Cook says, I like the artwork above the painting palette tray. Did you do it yourself? The artwork above the painting palette tray. You'll have to tell me what you mean. I'm not quite sure. I bet the next step is 3D printer that can print in full colour. You can get those already. You just need to mortgage your house. They are literally $200,000-300,000. They're about $180,000 to buy a colour resin one. There's 3 types. Ones that print gypsum, which are very fragile and don't do small. They wouldn't do this scale well. You can get nylon, which almost goes down to this scale, and then you can get the full colour resin, Mimaki, and they're $180,000. So they're the most expensive, and they can almost do this scale in full colour. You know, it's a good arm's length full colour, but they're there. But you know, the gypsum full colour print is 10-15 years old technology. People just aren't advancing it as quickly as you'd think, which surprises me. And I think some modelers would like fully ready printed models, because you have Walther's Built Ups, you have Scaledale by Bachman. You know, you have, was that Hornby? You have all these ready-made buildings that, and I've got them. I've actually just got rid of them all. I had them because I got them almost like placeholders until I put in something better, so it looked like my layout was filled up. It's just a very, you know, useful thing to have. You know, small buildings, or I weather them up and make them look really good, and it just saves me a building step. I did that with the yard office, did it with Wolfschlager's motors, and they look really cool. You know, they are great models. So I think a lot of modelers would like that, especially those with limited time and more money. Right, what is a filter? This is called filters. Now, this wasn't that successful in many ways for 2 reasons. I mixed myself up 3 colours, a sort of bluey colour because the slates looked a bit green and needed toning down and needed darkening. I also mixed up a Starship Filth, which is a beautiful dark grey, great for weathering, better than pure black. And it's the kind of it's the black grey of oil paints. So these are all oil paints, and I mixed them with terps. I love the smell of terps. It comes from trees, pine trees, so it's resinous. That actually caused me a problem. Now, when I put this blue in, it's this one particularly is the problem. I squeezed the blue out the tube and the oil came out and went into the mix. And that oil will take weeks to dry off. And I didn't really think about it. I just put it on, put loads of this filter on because this colour was just not quite right for me. It didn't feel blue enough. It felt a bit too lilac. So I put all these roofs with this dark blue just to act a little bit as a shadow and just to darken them, just to change the tone slightly. 2 weeks later, they're still tacky. Not anymore, but they were still tacky. I bought some Sans Odor, which is odourless thinners, expensive, and I also bought some odourless thinners, but I never got around to trying those. And those are art brands, and this is Art Terps, and I've got a massive bottle of it, and as I said, I love the smell. And I think it was the oil that was in there, but terps can also dry slightly gummy. So the next time I did these, I followed the Michael Rinaldi method of putting your oil paints on a scrap of cardboard first. Just corrugated cardboard, the thick box stuff, and the oils come out and soak into that cardboard, and what you're left with is the pigments without the oils. And all my subsequent washes, which admittedly were not only oil free, but they were also done with Sans Odor, which is mineral spirits, white spirit, I suppose. It's effectively white spirit in this country, or mineral spirits, or whatever it is in America. And they dried almost instantly, as long as they weren't on too thick. The ones that didn't dry were things like the slate loads, where there were loads of fine lines, and I'd actually filled up the gap with quite a lot of it, and they only had a day to dry. Now, I tried hair drying them, but with oil, you almost need it just to set on its own. It's almost I don't think it's an oxidation process, but it is definitely a curing process that airflow and heat will speed, but I just ran out of time. I'll fix it in a minute because I've got another set of washes to go on first. And I put on more black washes and the paints are just around the side of the cap, so I can choose whether I add a bit more black in or not. But I really wanted this to be a slightly bluer roof. When I was looking at the pictures, it was too green from the original paint, and that's fine. So it got a couple of coats of these just as washes, and then I let it dry for a week before putting on the next stage, which is the weathering washes, which we'll get to in a minute. Bye, Tim. You've probably already headed off by the time I say this, but have a good one. James Avery, Cyberpunk colours are terrific. Vaporwave and synthwave colour schemes really make figures and landscaping pop. They do. I have great ideas on what I can do with it. I just need to work out to do it in 3D printing, because I need my next set of projects to have a 3D printing element I can sell effectively. So Scaledale is Hornby, Scenecraft is Batman. I knew I was getting that wrong. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, Scaledale is Hornby. And they're very, I've had a couple over the years, and they're very good additions to just to your layout. If you're got a big layout and you want to fill it, because you don't want it to be empty while you build everything. The A2 sized watercolour of the building that was shot in the previous film section. John's trying to describe the it will be a print or something. It is, yeah, it is an IKEA glass, definitely. I've got a lot of them. It's very good. Yeah. I'm sorry, John. Probably just a printout. It's just a print. It looks like a watercolor. It's a frame from a camera that's very old, so it's from 1960, just after they cleared the docks. It might even be 61. So I think the colors have just become a little bit leached, which is probably why the effect. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look at Vaporwave, James. I need to use the airbrush of Vaporwave. Will be really good at wet blending. I will use the airbrush. I've got some plans on some of the Gundam to do some gradients, so I need to get better at gradients anyway. And then fluorescent is another great thing. If you know you can put a black light sort of section on, that can work really well, because you can just light everything up with black lights. I've got some black light LED strip, which would work really well. So if you put the fluorescents on and put a black light on them, they really just pop. And I've got the LED strip. So I will be putting that somewhere in my new as a sort of baton or something, so I can use it for lighting. Now, if you, like me, and you've painted these windows, putting a dark wash around them also helps just get rid of any wobbly lines, because it sits in the gaps. So it makes your painting look a little bit sharper because it's black in the gaps. It's also really useful. A lot of these sides of the building, especially the small ones, they're actually pebble dash. You might not realise it, but the plain looking ones are pebble dash. And this black here, wash here, helps to bring out that pebble dash texture that is just missing. It's in the print, but it's just missing when you look at it otherwise. I designed this little print in Fusion 360 4 years ago. It's slightly warped. It's actually leaning back. But there we go. And these are just the little sheds that I said that go at the front of the dock. They're all getting done. Now the really pale colour I actually use on this terrace. It's got some black around all the areas you'd expect there to be black, like the roof. But I used the pale colour as mortar in the stonework. Now, doing mortar with a wash is actually a really good way. And what you'll notice is when I put these washes in, I'm putting them everywhere for speed because it's landscapes. If I was doing this as a plastic model and it was panel lining, I'd be really precise. But for this, I ain't really got time to be that precise. I've got so much to do and I've only got 8 weeks and it's just everywhere. And because of that, you need to consider when you're painting your base coats, what washes you're going to put over the top. So you know you're going to put a black wash or a pale wash. I changed the colour a bit on that one. If you know you're going to do that, you might want to paint your initial paint colour a slightly different colour. So here I did it a bit paler than I needed it to be, knowing I was going to put a mortar on that would be more coloured and would sit in the gaps. And even this one, it didn't have a lot of oil in it. It didn't particularly set up. It was still a bit squidgy. But this all gets sorted in the next stage. And in case you're wondering, this is just normal artist oil wash. So you can buy these oil paints in art stores or Hobbycraft or wherever you like. The Starship Filth is a Abteilung 404 and MIG Productions, one of those types of ones. But realistically, a dark grey would do as well. Payne's grey is a bit blue, but I often use Payne's grey instead of black. And that's all you need is oil paint. And these little mixing tubs, they shrink a bit. The solvents do eventually affect them. But they've got lids so they don't dry out. Those are little sauce pots that you get salad dressing in or something if you buy a salad. But you can get them on Amazon or eBay, 100 quite cheaply. And they're really useful when you're doing projects like this. Because I use these washes on 8 or 10 different lots of items. And I use them solidly for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I kept adding more terps and more paint in and keeping the mix. But they are definitely useful things to have, and oil washes are just probably the cheapest way to do this. They work incredibly well. You can get them in any country for those people who are worried about, oh, I can't get that in my country. Oil paints are just in artist stores everywhere. So they are incredibly effective. And, I've got enamel washes and I use them on the walls. But this is just another way of doing the same thing. But I did have some dirtier bits that didn't look that good. Here I'm going over with some black now to add. It's basically a black wash, still an oil paint wash, but using Starship Filth. And at the same time, because my brush has now got a blackish colour on it, I used it to smooth out any areas that looked a bit rough, like around the bottom of those windows. Here I'm just doing the roofs with some black streaking just to, you know, it's a dock. It's at the end of its life. It's not going to have pristine roofs. They don't look that dirty, so I didn't cover them with moss or anything like that, like my on. I just went over and put some streaks on of just mostly black, just to tone it all down. And I thought the blue was getting a bit blue. I'd probably overcompensated with the blue filter, and this just toned it down again. But I had the pictures, so I knew where it streaked. I could see those streaks on the real thing, so I used that as well. So Stephen's asking, have I ever used dyed teddy bear fur for large areas of wild grass, or do I just use static grass? I haven't. I bought some to use, and I've never actually used it. I had a brownish one. I just never have, because I do use static grass, I guess, and I can't be bothered to dye my teddy bear fur. And I haven't really done a lot of very, very wild grass. I used Gauge Master grass mats for my last wild grass, which is tall, and I used the beige one, and that works really well. So there we are, I'm just cleaning off the gunk there in that lovely out of focus video shot with me over the top of it. And then you can just take it off, big brush, big strokes, just clean everything up slightly. That's the nice thing about oil paints, and because they're not actually drying properly, it's fine. They're still workable for quite a long time. John says the buildings are looking great, and you do love doing your washes to bring items to life. Do you know, I am so simplistic when I'm doing a building like this. Because I'm in a crunch, I'm just going to go back to my tried and true methods that I know work. So for me, it is almost invariably base coat, wash, maybe a highlight, don't always. These I didn't highlight. And for these, I had a lot of problems with tackiness. And that's where, you know, it had 3 washes on it, you can see by this point. So it was always going to be a push to get it dried in time. But I do love washes. And this is how I solved it. Pigments. Now, this one I painted with, this is just actually burnt sienna, neat burnt sienna oil paint, which just happened to be on the side of that one I've been using. And I used pigments dabbed into it to get the rust effect. It's a bright rusty roof in the pictures, it really is. And pigments are brilliant for adding rust effects over paint. And then for everything else, this is, I had 2 Vallejo, light slate grey and dark slate grey, and an AK Interactive nameless colour, because they love to have these pigments you get in sets, and then they love to put sort of printing on the outside that rubs off. I have no idea what colour this was. I used it a lot. They were the nearest I could get, and I spent a lot of time looking for a slate bluey grey. The nearest I could get, and they're still not perfect. But what these did was they detackified it. So I've got the dark colour and I've got the light colour. And normally this wouldn't stick that well. If you're like me and you've tried pigmenting, sometimes they just don't stick, especially on a smooth model. And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to matte lacquer these and they're not set. And then I thought, I don't need to matte lacquer these. I can use the pigment to set the oil paint. So it was a win-win in the end. Tacky oil paint, the oil in it, meant the pigments just stuck beautifully. They toned down the excessive blueness, which was just way too excessive in person and on camera, and got rid of any blotches. On they went, absolute joy. I do recommend, therefore, trying pigments as your final stage. If they're not sticking, which quite often they don't, matte varnish will fix that. And actually my rolling stock, when you see that, had a very different set of techniques. The same techniques, but different products. And it just all worked very differently. And yet it was still just base coat, wash, and then pigment. I went through and took all the black bits out, I thought, and they're still there. So there was a lot of time I spent getting rid of all of these sort of areas. Okay. Do they have the orange lichen on the slate roofs in real life? What orange lichen? There's no orange in this at all. I think the colour that's furthest away from blue is dust colour, but everything else is just, it's all just light greys going on, but they seem to have a brownish hue when you put them on. But that's it, there's nothing orange on there at all. So Stephen asked, do these buildings still survive in real life even though the railway is gone? This big one here is, but they've taken the little yard office and used the slate siding from it to extend this one sideways right up into the stone wall that I modelled, where there's a gap at this point of this building. They've built a new building to the right, the yard office is gone, the steps are still there, and obviously the little back sheds have gone. The bridge is still there, and I modelled the bridge based on the pictures I had, and the trackage is all gone. The telegraph poles, etc. have all changed. There's loads of pictures from about the 60s with this before and after it's shutting, so you can see these buildings quite a bit from some angles, and then other angles you just never really see them. The background buildings, the ones on the far left and the terraces, they're still there, and I modelled those from recent photos, but they've had additions, and they are actually in shot on some of the photos I've got. So I went through and I realised afterwards I'd done the very back left building slightly wrong. It's got a different front, but I was like, whatever, it's a background building, it's close enough for this. I did the chimney pots wrong on it as well, which was annoying, but yeah. So when you see, the thing with buildings like this is it's easy to go, well, it looks excessive now. You have to see them in situ, and actually, because I didn't seal these, they stay at this. When I do the rolling stock, I sealed that, because rolling stock you seal because it's going to have loads of handling, and mine did get a lot of handling, and so you seal it and the pigments more or less disappear. But with these, because I'm not sealing them because they're just buildings, these pigments are just here, that's it, for kind of the rest of their lives. No one's going to really touch them, so it's fine if the pigment is still loose. Your slate loos look great after all that. Oh, thank you, Norm. Oh, was that it? Did we not have a picture at the end of them in place? Oh, maybe I didn't. Well, that's interesting. I'm just going to see. So what was my very last picture there? No, I finished with that. Oh, that's interesting. That means you're going to have to wait. Nobody took that picture out. I thought I had a picture of me putting them in place, but I moved a lot of things around, so maybe I didn't. So yeah. George's asking about the orange yellow moss you find on reefs near the coast. No, they didn't. They looked hardly weathered at all. And that kind of lichen is, yeah, it's just, if any, no. Slate doesn't lichen in that way as much as some of the other things. It gets black on it. It gets sort of a black hue and streak on it, which is what you can see there. James Avery, have you tried the Dirty Down products yet? No. I have so many weathering products. I'm trying not to buy any more. I have too much. I don't need any more. That's what I keep telling myself. Thanks to the creative modeler. It was nice to have you here. And what time are we on? 9:52. We've only got 8 minutes left anyway. So Norm, oh no, a cliffhanger. So for those people who have been on my Patreon, you've seen it all finished. I'm not putting photos out because it's going to be on TV, so I need to wait for it to go on TV, and then I'll release the final photo and carry on the live streams that are sort of still relating. But I think I've got, this is live stream number 5, and I've got 11 in total at the moment. So coming up, we've got Doc, and then we've got Daz Clay and the ground. Then we've got kind of the ground cover and tile grout. It sounds like I'm playing them out a bit, but each of these are very big stages. Then there's one on greenery, which is everywhere, from grass up to trees. And then there's one on rolling stock, one on detailing and atmosphere. And I might do one on photos and videos, but I think that might just be a separate video. So there's still quite a lot to go. Yeah, sorry, I thought I had got a final photo. I'm obviously saving that for the big reveal. Stephen Cameron, don't worry too much about things not being 100% perfect. Just press the I believe button. I know, but I want it 100% perfect because that's just me. Yeah, I was confused as well, John, but I think he does mean in real life you can see a speckle pattern. Not on these particular buildings is the short answer. I don't think it's, it just doesn't seem to stick on the Welsh slate roofs or even the sides. They're just completely, maybe it's something to do with slate being quite smooth. It just doesn't get traction. And I didn't see it on the stone particularly either, which is interesting because some places have a lot of it. I've done it in the past on buildings and I've just speckled it on using a toothbrush and actually just pigment mixed with IPA. You've got a lovely chalky figure. I've got a moss green pigment and I've spattered it on, or I've spattered it with paint as well. And I have tried spattering with a yellow pigment, and if you do it with IPA, it's this, you sort of scrape it with an X-Acto blade, create this slurry and then flick it on. You get the lovely sort of slightly raised texture as well. But no, didn't see it anywhere around here. And I was looking a lot at some of the colours. I could have gone a bit more to town on some more green streaking, I think, on the dock front. But I didn't in the end. I kept it fairly plain so it didn't detract too much from the one above. So Tamsin's tried, this will be the Dirty Down, rust and the moss. I've been intrigued. I've seen them advertised, but I've not done them. So Norm, it's a good tease, but it's not for the next live stream because you probably won't see the buildings now for another 6 months. So because that was literally one of the last things I did, was because I was waiting for the top to dry, you know, to stop being tacky. So pigmenting them was almost the last thing I did before they went on. So that was probably the last week of the project. So definitely you're going to be a while before you see them again. But I can send you a photo if you're desperate. Digger's, the result is perfect. Thanks, Digger. I do appreciate that. So John Cook's got a memory of Flash Gordon. Yeah, cliffhanger. Am I going to survive when I go off the cliff? I can't tell you when or where the TV programme is. It's kind of one of those things, you can just say you're on a TV programme that's being filmed, but you can't say what it is because they don't, it's kind of, you know, one of those things, isn't it? So I can't say much more about it. I did say I wouldn't release it before it came out, but it'll be next year. So it will be next year. It's only going to be 5 minutes. It's all this work, but I knew I was starting a job and I kind of wanted it pushed through so it wasn't hanging over me. Because I think I'm going to have a lot more, I'm going to think what goes on my YouTube channel when I start a full-time job, because I just can't do what I'm currently doing because I won't get the bandwidth. Yeah, so Jura 21 was asking about in Cornwall, they're covered on the Cornish roofs. I think it's just, I think it's just the slate. This is all slate roofs. I suspect they have black, if it's lichen. It's just kind of black. So Stephen's back to Skye tomorrow. It's okay, just don't like leaving Mary. It's beautiful Skye, it's just bleak at times. Norman needs a time machine, don't we all? So anyway, Tim's looking forward to the TV programme. He knows all about it because he was finding stuff for it. Whether they use it or not, I don't know. And anything that's been filmed, there's no guarantee, because one of the guys had seen the first 2 pieces cut and went, no, that's not in it, that's not in it, that's not in it, that's not in it, when I said all the things I'd previously done. So I think it's edited to the bare bones. So probably, this is Kathy, here's her layout, here's her building it, it's finished! And that'll probably be it. That'll probably be all you see. But anyway, it's done and I'm happy. So we've 3 minutes left. My voice is going to give out soon. I did a COVID test this morning. It's not COVID, but I went to London for 2 days, and it's always good to test when you've been to London because it's just the hotbed of COVIDness in this country, I think. So there we go. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to, you know, getting the final photos and videos done. The 009 track, getting all that run for the last time, and then just taking stuff. I've done the slider shots. I need to do the ones as it runs past people and things. There's a lot of people on this taking videos and photos of the last steam train coming through. So there's definitely a lot of people. And it all ended up, I wanted a desaturated atmosphere, but it actually ends up a lot brighter than I meant it to. And I think it's a lot of it's the people are quite bright by the time I get to the end. And that last pigment coat on the buildings really toned it down a bit because it was getting just a bit too bright. And all of the buildings got pigmented. So there we go. Right, Norm says it was a fun stream. Thanks, look forward to the next episode. Good night, bye all, take care. And he's right. So, thank you all for coming and listening. It has been fun. It's going to be, it's an exciting journey. This build still has a long way to go. The buildings, I put them here because they're like the main players, but actually they didn't take the time. A base coat wash technique, even with the pigments at the end, is actually quite a quick technique considering. I mean, it still took me days to paint all those windows and scalloped slates and everything, but overall they're quite a quick bit of it. So next time we're on to some of the more time-consuming stuff. So everyone, have a good week, take care, and get some modelling done. Enjoy it, and I'll see you in a month's time. If I, oh, over here.